as you know, that we take up contemporary economic issues generally, but but we are doing this two consecutively. We did one a fortnight back and one today. And today we are adding lots of economic uncertainty into the whole policy making. Something that has happened in the last 24 hours. And I requested Professor Ashima Goyal, who's been the former member of the Monetary Policy Committee and former member today morning, I thought we can't do this with her. The global uncertainties, implications on the price war that has started, direct attacks on the gas installations, and the implications this can have for monetary policy across the world is immense. It is surprising that ECB has kept their rate constant. Bank of England has kept their rate constant. But Fed Reserve is expected to now lower their rate because these two, Bank of England and the ECB meeting, happened before the strikes on the gas installations. But now the one which is on the track, which is very worrying, is that the interest rates everywhere, I think the global uncertainty has magnified immensely. To discuss these issues, we have a panel with us today. This panel again has been with us earlier on various geopolitical issues, but then the issue today is extremely different, complex, and I think becoming difficult by the day. The Middle East is just not what we all had thought would be. The oil shock that we were aware of mid 70s, early 70s and late 70s has changed its color. The oil shock has become, I think, a very different type of oil shock this time. There's so much of geopolitics, there's so much of uncertainty. And what is the goal of all this is also changing by the day. Some places, the judgment is that probably it has something to do with the oil. At other places, the discussion is totally different. In any case, in a highly integrated global world, how do you address these issues? Very complex issues. The military issues now becoming economic issues. Very, very complex issues.
Sharon, are you there? We seem to have lost you. Can you hear him?
Cyber attack, ma'am.
What?
Probably a cyber attack, ma'am.
Really? Who is there? Somebody there from PhD chamber? Who's Vivek? Are you there?
Can you hear
He's
me
traveling
now?
actually. That's why.
Can you hear me?
Dr. Singh, is there some issue with your network? Because we can't see you also.
Let me just give me 1 minute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you and see you now.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we were hearing you fine until just a little while back.
Okay, all right. So now we have then invited, I don't know where we got disconnected.
Just when you were about to introduce the panel, so you can go ahead.
Okay. So all I was trying to mention is that the issue is very complex. It is now getting into spilling over into economic issues in a very big way. The price rise, the impact on the monetary policy, Each of these factors are becoming now very, very important. It was with this thing in mind that I today morning decided to invite Professor Goyal to chair the session and said, please, we want your input into this complex issue. So to discuss this, we have invited Professor Gulshan Sachdeva. He is professor and Jean Monnet Chair at the Center for European Studies, GNU. He has come and spoken at EGROW even earlier. His work is focused on European economic integration. He has recently written a piece which I thought was very, very good. And actually, Professor Sachdeva, after reading your piece, today the schedule was someone else to speak. But then reading your piece, you remember I immediately came back to you and said, let's discuss this at EGROW because he's written a very, very important piece. Now, any discussion on the war, we have to have the defense aspect. Though me and Professor Goyal both come from defense families, and we have grown up in defense environment, but that's not enough. The modern warfare and its spillover and implications on the monetary policy, economic policy is so immense. So we have requested General Rakesh to come and his experience with us. General Rakesh has been here with us earlier. He is General Bipin Rawat Chair of Excellence, the United Service Institution of India, and the Distinguished Fellow VIF and Clause. He was commissioned in Gorkha Rifles in 77 and had a career spanning 40 years in the army, and he has worked at different levels in the army. We also have invited Professor A.K. Pasha. Professor Pasha is at the Gulf Studies Center for West Asian Studies, School of International Studies, GNU. He'll be probably joining us a little late. He's traveling back from, I think, what he mentioned to me was overcommitted with TV appearances. And he has served as chairperson and is now director, Gulf Studies program at the Center for West Asian Studies in GNU. With this brief introduction of the topic, the urgency, and the speakers, I hand over the session to Professor Goyal to take the proceedings further. Professor, over to you.
Thank you, Charan, and congratulations to EGROW for again putting together an excellent panel on a very timely issue that everybody is, the level of attention and worry is increasing day by day. So I'm looking forward to hearing from our experts about the geopolitics, the likely path this conflict is going to take, how long it will last, how can it end, what is the possible, and also what is the possible developments. But I will just flag that as economists now we are really in India we were seeing things going well after a long time. We've lived through multiple shocks. They're called poly shocks today. So just yesterday, I was at a CII meeting and there was so much doom and gloom there about giving the projections on possible impact on inflation and growth. We see these all over that, it's likely to raise inflation, decrease growth. And India has a very, very great sensitivity to and fear of oil shocks because we suffered from them regularly. But my own view is that we have become experts at dealing with poly shocks, and we actually did much better after the pandemic. And so, what we need to do, we need to be ready to start the pandemic playbook, which is that initially, until you're sure a shock is persistent, we have space to absorb the shock. Petrol prices still haven't risen for us, although we are importing it at higher prices. The OMCs, the government has scope. After the Ukraine war, they had cut excise taxes and so on. But if this is going to be persistent, because now that oil infrastructure is being attacked, but today, thankfully, that seems to have paused, then we can expect persistent effects on oil prices. Earlier, before yesterday's attacks, the oil futures 6 months ahead were showing $75. Yesterday, they went up to $96 and $100. So $100 above $80 is difficult for us to manage. But as I was saying, the long-term pandemic playbook was really to have liquidity infusions, rate cuts that are temporary, that are time-barred, that protect the vulnerable, but do not create dependence in the future. And we saw that after the pandemic, our banks strengthened, our corporates strengthened their balance sheets. And then the second aspect is at the same time to do long-term reforms. And here in the oil economy, we have been pushing towards green technologies, and our oil intensity has been falling for the last 30 years, around more than 1% a year. And today, about 50% of our electricity generation comes from green sources, but it's not fully integrated into the system because of the lack of power distribution reforms. So this is a great opportunity to push further on this sort of substitution and increase. So the two principles are substitution and diversification. Substitution away from oil. In the long term, it should strengthen our economy and reduce our vulnerability on oil. Diversification of trade routes. We've written a lot of FTAs, but we are still highly dependent on the Middle East corridor. So we need to diversify away from that also. Explore other kinds. Today we have surplus ethanol production. Explore other kinds of gases and domestic production, as well as other sources of import. Substitution, a big problem for us is the fertilizer subsidies, and those are going to go up tremendously. But again, our fertilizer economy is very, very inefficient, overuse of nitrogen, and so there's a lot of efficiency improvements that can be done there, and which will benefit the economy in the long term. But because, when I was at the CII, a lot of market participants were so worried because of finally, our stock markets have been very resistant to outflows of domestic SIPs and so on. But finally, they seem to be giving way under these multiple shocks. But again, the pandemic teaches us that oil stock prices did fall after the pandemic, but then they recovered, and those who stayed invested or put in money in that downturn really made a lot of money in the future. So if we follow this reform path and support short-term support, our markets will recover, our growth story will stay intact, and those who sustain faith in the economy will do well over the long term. But again, markets need support, especially communication from the Reserve Bank. The rupee, for example, a major reason for outflows is the rupee constantly falling, then what FIs can take out reduces. But if they are confident that it's going to stop falling, they come back, because then they come in at a low rate. They come in at a low rate in markets and they make a lot of money. So we need to, and the RBI can improve the communication and the kind of intervention. For example, oil swaps for oil marketing companies had worked very well after the taper on tantrum in 2013-14, in taking all that dollar demand out of the market. So there are many schemes, many instruments they have, and they should communicate and start using them, I think. So let me now turn to our experts. So Professor Sachdeva, I'll go in the order in this brochure. If you can discuss and tell us what to expect. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Professor Goyal, and thank you, Professor Charan Singh, for inviting me for this very interesting webinar. As you know, Professor Charan and others, I'm here at the European Studies with the School of International Studies. I'm basically an economist, but of course, for more than 25 years in the School of International Studies, So trying to link my research uh, on economic issues, and particularly India's external economic engagements and India's energy security with the broader geopolitical trends. And this is what exactly is happening for the last couple of months to the global economy. So I'll just try to look at this issue, which has just such an important issue, which has really created, I would say, death and destruction in the West Asian region, continuing. This has also created economic havoc globally. And this is also going to affect us definitely, both in the energy scenario, in the trade, and many other issues. And of course, most importantly, on our strategic autonomy. So how this is really important for us, although we are actually relatively small player to make any major, I would say, in the way things are happening in this region. One is, I think it's quite clear now that this war, which is Israeli-US war on Iran, is really an unnecessary war. There was actually no reason to go for this war. Yes, for decades, we know that there are different ambitions of Iran, there are different ambitions of Israel, and then there are different ambitions of the United States to dominate this region. And Israel, of course, would like to other powers, because they have worked out very reasonable relationship with some of the Gulf countries. And Iran has been a very serious irritant for them. So they obviously always wanted Iran to be kept really in a place. Similarly, Iran has its own views about Israel, and they have not been shying away from saying what they are. Americans, of course, would like overall, dominance in this region, and of course, Israel to dominate this place. Europeans, again, they have their own relationship in all these countries. And they also have certain difficulties with the Iran's ambitions, particularly nuclear ambitions. And they also have their bases. Being a transatlantic partnership, they also work very closely with the US, has been at least in the past. So last year there was an attack on Iran by the US, and then it was declared that all the nuclear facilities have been kind of obliterated. And now, when this war started, as we know from the details from Omani foreign minister, when he was facilitating some of those nuclear and the talks. The talks were going well. They were quite close to getting somewhere. It means to the satisfaction of both the parties. So in between, there was no need to go. I mean, if that was the background, ambitions, of course, every country had their own ambitions to do that. Independent countries, they can have their own way of looking at their foreign policy, their security issues. But I think things were going in the direction where it would have been very useful for us. Iran, as you know, has been in a very important, and of course, the whole West Asian region. I don't have to go into detail, because I think here everybody knows the kind of importance what we have for this region. Now, as things have unfolded, now, as I see it, things have really reached a very dangerous phase. Now, the first phase we had, where they wanted to have regime change. In the first 1 or 2 days, they had a lot of enthusiasm, because illegally, one of the main leader, head of the state, was assassinated. Many other policymakers, many other leaders were also killed, and that process continues even till now, because today also we heard somebody has been killed, and yesterday, Mr. Larjani was killed. So that process is continuing, which is also again a very, very, I would say, dangerous trend. Then the regime change hasn't happened. So one Ayatollah Khomeini has gone, the new Ayatollah Khomeini is back. He's in place. Somehow they are holding. Then we were told that their Air Force has been decimated, their Navy has been sunk. Still, you can see they have been able to retaliate. So the first phase in which the regime change kind of thing and all the major centers of infrastructure, military, civilian major infrastructure, that has been badly damaged as far as Iran is concerned. What Iran after that, of course, we know that they have made it a regional war, knowing fully well that they can't attack US. Israel is quite protected. So now, as a result of this, now it has all spread all across the West Asian region. So many countries, we are all aware, are now involved in this. And as a result of this, production of oil and gas has been stopped because they can't, now sell it anywhere. Because the Strait of Hormuz is also the third phase when it has been closed. So production is down. So daily we have roughly about 105 million barrels a day of production demand in the world. And out of this, about 20 million barrels comes from this region. And broadly, this 20 million barrels are out from the market. And this 20 million barrels, apart from some of the shipment which are going from Iran to China, but rest of the time is basically now out. And of course, the LNG, which now even the LNG has been seriously affected. That's what we can see the impact of that in the Indian market, Indian consumer, everywhere. Now, most of this 20 million barrels comes to Asian markets rather than going to other markets. Mainly to China, India, Japan, South Korea, and others. It goes a little bit, some petroleum products also go to Europe and other, but largely coming to Asian markets. So Asia is, that sense, definitely more affected. But oil being, or energy products being global commodities. So when there is a price rise, that's going to affect everybody. It's not just only immediate, buyers of those are directly going to buy. So the impact is being felt all across from the United States to Europe, anywhere else, because the price, as Professor Goyal was mentioning, the whole last 1 year it was 60 to 70 barrel. Now it's already more than 100. It can go up to 120. We don't know, and in fact now, if you are really looking for deliveries, you don't get even 110, 120. Sometimes even immediate deliveries can go even higher than that. So the things are pretty serious. And as you know that, any $10 increase in crude prices will add up over about 10, 12 billion import bill. And that's going to have pressure on your rupee. That's going to have pressure on inflation and ultimately on growth. And the question, Professor Goyal, you asked about how long it will last. Nobody knows how long it will last. Because they started obviously with a very different design, where they thought from the Venezuela model, they will just have a regime change. And they were quite, I think, their assessment was based on what they did in Venezuela, and also a lot of the demonstrations which took place earlier in Iran. They thought that, once the leadership is kind of eliminated, people will come to streets, and then it will be easier for them to topple the government, and then they'll have control over all the resources, etc., as they are doing in Venezuela. And that story hasn't really worked. So the second phase, so the regime change thing is now past. Now that's somehow nobody is talking about, and because now they talk something very different, become regional, from regional, this is becoming global in a sense. This is affecting everyone. And the third thing, which again has become major issue, now other issues are gone into the background. Now the Strait of Hormuz has become a serious issue. How do we really reopen this? Now, anybody who was interested or knowing about this region could have worked out that that was a very important thing to think before that. Maybe they never really thought, because they thought things will not come to that pass. Iran will just collapse before that, but that hasn't happened. So now the problem is that's already closed effectively. So how do you really make it open? He appealed to all Europeans, their transatlantic partners. This is what the article Professor Charan Singh was mentioning. So as we know that all Europeans, what they're saying that this is not really Europe's war. Although in fact, as I think our external affairs minister was mentioning, this is what exactly is proved again and again. When you had a war in Ukraine, he said, they believe that Ukraine war is the global war and other things are not really Europe's problems. And similarly, now they're saying that this is not really Europe's war. The German defense minister has been very quite categorical that if the world's biggest navy, United States, if they can't really force it open, few frigates from the European countries can't really make any major difference. So whatever the reason is, they are not really they are reluctant to join, knowing that it's not an easy task to do that. So now only way now you can do it, perhaps you have to now put boots on the ground. This is what perhaps ultimately looks like they would have to do it. Then we are in a different ballgame altogether. We have seen many other things happening. So now I think what's perhaps is from the regime change. My feeling is that even today, Israeli Prime Minister yesterday was talking about, he said now we are working for the regime collapse. So that's really dangerous, because if there is a regime collapse, because that can happen, obviously, when the world's biggest military is against you, you can hold on for some time, which they have been doing it. Russians and Chinese can provide you some intelligence, maybe some inputs, etc. You can, but once you start, somehow there are certain breaks start cracking. And anyway, most of the Revolutionary Guards are in different places doing differently. They could be wooed by players from different kinds, provided different ammunition, etc. So once you get into that territory, then it's such a dangerous thing, because somebody will control the state of Hormuz, then they will start managing. Some particular group will do something else. And there, what we have seen, what happened earlier in Iraq, what happened in Syria, what happened in Afghanistan, the story is well known. It can take months, it can take years. Now, if you are going in that direction, that's a very, very dangerous territory in which we are entering. And if we do not de-escalate at this point of time, I think things are going to be serious for years to come, for months to come, for the whole world, and particularly for us, because we have, as you know, 200 billion trade. We have 10 million people there. We have all the energy, etc. And of course, strategically, things start unfolding. It is going to create a serious problem for us. But just one or two more points, particularly for India. Now, how this can really long term, as Professor Ashima mentioned, we can do things long term, it's okay. But the question is, what do you do immediately tomorrow, day after tomorrow? The way the stock markets happen, the way your rupee can come under serious stress. All these things can happen. It's already happening. It can become more serious. Today, we don't see problems at the petrol pumps, but if things continue, it will affect that as well. It's not just only LNG, because things now, what we were buying earlier, and that's when I come to the strategic autonomy part again. We were buying oil from Iran. We stopped under pressure from the US. We were buying from Russia, more than 2 million barrels a day. That has come down to 1 million. And they, in fact, I mentioned even that under Indo-US deal, somehow we agreed. We have never responded to that, but obviously there was some pressure to reduce it. Now this unsanctioned oil, which can go to anywhere, not just to India. So the Russians are not going to give you any discount. So what we were buying, say, about 55, 60. Now anyway, even the Russian oil has to be bought at $90+. What will happen? Yesterday, there were some indications of unsanctioning even the Iranian oil. So let's see all these new developments. And then one another thing about our all connectivity ambitions. Because if you look at whatever connectivity things for the last 20 years we have been talking, one major central thing was our international north-south trade corridor. It hasn't really taken off because of, we can go into details why, but at least the Iran-Russia sector was working pretty fine. Now, there was pressure, of course, we have moved out from Chabahar port anyway. And then Chabahar port has also been attacked by Israelis. There's a damage. And another India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, that since the announcement, that again is under back burner because of earlier the Gaza war and now what is happening here. And now for the last few days, there is also serious attack by Iranians on the Haifa port, which was supposed to be one of our, hub from where things would move. So all our connectivity, ambition designs, whether North-South trade corridor to India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, the things are going the way they are. I think we have to have a serious issues with all of our connectivity. We have to rethink because these are even long term. These are not even short term things here for us. Yeah, I know that time maybe my time might be ending. So these are some of the things. For us, there are now if you look at the global growth, already there are indications that if the price going to stay about 890. They're already, the numbers can come down. If the global growth is down, obviously you'll have implications for your growth, your exports, your everything else. And if our own growth is going to go down and the rupee goes depreciate, all these things are not going to happen in the long term. These are going to happen tomorrow, day after tomorrow, next month. So the last point I'll make about the BRICS presidency of India. Now, that's again for us a very, very important thing because, as you know, during G20 presidency, India made it a very big. India projected its power, India projected its ambition, India projected everything through G20. And it was a very, very successful show as far as India is concerned. Now, what you say, so far, our BRICS presidency has been very lackluster. We haven't really done much as far as the BRICS presidency is concerned. Now, one of the members of the BRICS, Iran, is assassinated. And of course, and we haven't been able to even issue a statement from BRICS as a presidency country. And yes, it's difficult to have a certain kind of consensus because two other members of the BRICS, particularly UAE and Saudi Arabia, if a kind of member, we can consider him also. Now, they are, of course, having attacks from Iran, so you may not have any immediate consensus. But at least as a chair, we can always issue certain statement. Now, if this whole thing continues for some time, I think the shadow of this is going to be on our BRICS presidency. So we may be able to hold certain procedural meetings here, etc. But that's not going to be that through BRICS presidency, India could have really asserted. Now, what India can really do now here is, because as I don't have to explain what stakes are for us in this region or instability of this region, we must start something because if nobody else is doing, we should do it. Prime Minister has spoken to President Macron. I'm not sure how much both of us have any, both Europeans and Indians have any, I would say, influence over President Trump. Or now even with the Iranians, how much they will trust Europeans and Indians. But still, at least we can start continuing. At least we must show that we are also, if other institutions or the global governance are not working, as a BRICS presidency, as a important, as we are saying now, friends and partner of our brother of Iranians, and also our own other partners within this region. So we must start some initiative to de-escalate. Because we may succeed, we may not succeed, but at least we should be showing that we are doing something to de-escalate this situation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. That was an excellent set of points. So let me take up what you ended with, because you know, what happens in this kind of situation is that, as you were saying, they went in with some objective that is not achieved. Now they're getting caught into it and they see no face saving or easy way to get out of it. So the task of anyone who is sort of persuading them to stop, that is what we do at home also. If two children start fighting, the elders have to kind of persuade them, you know, tell them how they will suffer, how the whole world is suffering. And I think Trump is sensitive to markets. If markets collapse, especially in the US, he's sensitive to the elections. Their midterm elections are due. People are saying he's lost that. If oil prices rise, that's a very sensitive issue. So he is open on those grounds. He needs to be, you know, somebody had a suggestion, if Iran, if Russia, so India through Russia, China, India, these are major countries, BRICS countries. If they can, if Iran can be persuaded to pass its nuclear material to Russia for safeguarding, then that's a major, you know, for Europe and for Israel. Then they might agree to, and also if now they're saying they can't change the regime, then what are they? Then they're saying the objective is to remove their arsenal. So they've continued bombing so long, and they can always say we've done enough. We look forward to our military experts' comments on this. That is there some way to stop?
Just 10 seconds. I mean, another
Yeah.
point which I mean, I think the others, I mean, Professor Pasha and General would also add, I believe. You know, this today, what we are hearing that Israel attacked on its own, and now Israel is accepting. I think this is all just window dressing. This simply, if anybody who is following this region, know little about this region and Americans and Israeli, nothing of this sort, where you are going to attack a major, you know, the energy field in Iran. This couldn't have been done without approval from the United States. Now, only thing that once they have actually retaliated with the with the Qatari one, now they are trying to kind of, you know, do that. I think nobody should really unnecessarily try to see that, you know, this was done only by Israelis. They can't just do it unless there was go ahead from the Americans. They may say anything because Trump and others can say anything, but thank you.
True, that's true. But at least Trump forced Netanyahu to say, I did it on my own. That shows Trump doesn't want, you know, this endless retaliation and destruction of oil infrastructure. So we look forward to our military expert, General Sharma, your views on all this and where this is heading. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Goyal. Thank you, Professor Charan Singh. And what a fantastic presentation by Professor Sachdeva. You can hear me, Nasa, ma'am? Yeah. So I will, you know, as a soldier, we first want to know why a war is being fought. Without knowing why a war is being fought, we can't get the right answers. And that is the biggest problem that one has been having over the last 3 weeks as to what is the aim, you know. Now, when you start searching on it, you know, in last 1.5 years, you can find out that President Trump has been broadly hinting that this is going to come. And you just read into the media itself is giving us these answers. If we start putting a thread through over a period of a year or so. I'll start with Iraq War 2003 when it happened. Now today, the entire Iraqi oil upstream and downstream is controlled by the Americans. So there are Iraqi corporations, total oil is taken out and money is deposited into the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, which gives some money for Iraqi government to run the government. So one is that when they go into a country, they control the oil and they carry forward the same thing for a very long time to come. One issue is this. The second issue I want to raise out is that President Trump, you know, we know in the course of last couple of years, 2023 onwards, China has made currency swap deals with all countries of the Gulf. It did with Saudi Arabia in 2023. It did with UAE in 2024. It had done with Iran 2024. It's done with Bahrain in 2024. So all have got a fixed amount of currency swap deals for dealing directly on oil trade, and it doesn't go to the New York banks for exchange of money. This is all being changed into yuan, and it's changed over to local currencies. In last year, in the month of July, Bloomberg carried a news item which said, Trump, quoting Trump, and I quote him, losing the dollar standard would be like losing a war. This Trump is saying, and Bloomberg has carried it, a major war. We are not going to allow that to happen. So he said in month of July, after he had hit Iran once, that we will not allow the dollar standard will go away. It will be like losing a war for us. And he has said this once 20 years ago also, when he was nowhere around in the government, saying that dollar is the gold standard for us. So, we start with him that he is not going to allow oil to go, and he will not allow dollar to go. And both ways, the Gulf war, he was losing out on the Gulf. This fellow who spoke in the Raisina dialogue, the US Deputy Secretary of State, Christopher Landau, this is just 10 days ago. Look at his statement against India. He's speaking in Raisina dialogue in Delhi, and he's speaking against India. And he says that US will not allow this mistake of fostering a competitor as it did with China by allowing India unchecked economic access. What he's saying is that we are not going to allow the same mistake with India that we made with China 20 years ago, meaning that we will not allow you to develop unhindered and become a challenger or a competition for us as China did. This he's saying in 10 days ago. So let's start with the bias that the thought process is not a small issue of hitting Iran for the purpose of them making nuclear weapons. In the month of December last year, again, there was a news item which said that Bibi Netanyahu went to Mar-a-Lago, and when he went to Mar-a-Lago, there was a press statement come out that time which said that President Trump and Bibi discussed how should we do this second round against Iran. This all media is carrying. This is December last year. So it is not that suddenly one fine morning, 28th of February, it happened. It was coming for a period of time. Only thing that we all who read geopolitics and geoeconomics were not able to put a thread through, okay, this is going to happen in this form at this moment. So that's a very major. So it as a par, with now $37 billion debt that these Americans have, there is a very big problem that was being heard. Saudis itself have gone into major debt. In last 2 years, Saudis have gone 20% in debt in 1 year. It's the kind of pressure that's being brought into this area by the United States. So my logic, I start with this logic, that there was a declining hegemonic power, and it's attempting to, through the war and coercion, to re-energize itself in its authority and defend the value of the dollar, and they defend the dollar, the power of the oil and the oil allied resources that the Americans control. That's why when he came up for election, he said, drill, baby, drill. Who talks? He becoming president, yeah? You talk big things. He's talking drill, baby, drill. Oil has been his bugbear while he was not a president, and then thereafter he's president. So we'll start with this basic premise. Now, second issue that I wish to raise is that when we start a war, we ask ourselves broad questions. If I was in service, I retired 10 years ago. If I was service, I would ask the government, what do you want me to achieve in Option 2? What do you want from me? I will have to convey what you want into military orders. That has to be translated according. So there is a political end game. A political end game which the politician must tell to the military that we want to achieve this. Now you can say regime change, destruction of nuclear capabilities, destruction of missiles, allowing the local population. Trump said so on second day. Now I've hit them. Now the local population, you must rise. So he's leading to a civil war or revolution. What was the aim in mind? Are these the aims? Again, my thought process is that there is a differing logic and different rationale between what the Israelis are doing and what the Americans are doing. There are different targeting policies, different end game. They decided different targets and decided different end games. So United States was not touching any oil resources because the United States has an intention of taking over the oil resources in time in whichever way they want to do it. The best way is if they have a favorable regime and take over the oil resources that the Iran possesses and also make sure that whatever happens to the Gulf countries, the Americans are brought in to sort out those issues. Basically, if I want to say is the Americans had an oil and gas game, and the Israelis have a game that we can't every 5 years start thinking that the Iranians will start feeding Hezbollah and Hamas and youth Houthis. Let's sort out once and forever. The Americans have given us a go ahead. This is the time to take the pound of flesh and put a thumb down on Iran so that it's not able to get up and able to feed, meaning Israel worried about its existential crisis that comes thanks to Israel. So there are two different aims and different logics why both these countries are fighting, and that's why the targeting which is being done by United States is way different than what targeting is being done by Israelis. So that's the thought about the basic thought which I had is to what is the end game. So end game, we've been reading that the Ayatollah Khomeini, God bless him, I hate the idea of using the word decapacitation strike. Decapacitation meaning cutting somebody's head off. Are we playing games with national leaders of another country calling it's a bland assassination being carried out? So, what is the political end game of these people and how did they want to regime change? We who have been reading about Iran and this war is coming, we knew that the Ayatollah had made 4 tiers of government in all 31 provinces and separated it out. He said every province, if there are first tier dead, second tier dead, third tier dead, the fourth tier. So he had planned for the death of the first, second, third tier because Mossad had made great inroads into Iran. So then there's a very serious problem, but they had worked the chemistry out. Unfortunately, on the day one, when the war started, the entire first, second, third rung, except for Larijani, who's been dead now, the entire first, second, third rung was decimated by the Israelis because they had inside information as to where the meeting was held. So the Beit Rahbari, the central compound which was hit on 8:10 in the morning by the Israelis, destroyed the 3 rungs. So now they have to start looking for the 4th rung. And even the Mustafa was also injured, as it seems. So, there was a deliberate attempt to sort out the first, second, third regime, and the regime got sorted out. But what the regime had decided, they knew this thing is going to happen. One day, the Americans will hit us so hard, and Americans are outclassed, outmatched. They are centuries ahead of warfare as far as Iran is concerned. So the Iranians knew one day we will be hit. So how do you do corner a dog and hit it? The dog has to find a way out. So what they did, they have detached people. They said, okay, all units are detached away from Delhi or Tehran. You will fight your own wars. If a target is hit, your response will be B, C, D. So each response has been laid down and given to those people. Now they are not under control. They're not in communication. They have been left out separately. They're fighting separate wars because the communication infrastructure was brought down on day one by the Americans and the Israelis. Now there is no control that you have on the army units which are located in all the 31 provinces across there. So they are all fighting. You can't even say, don't fire at Qatar, because now the orders were signed and given by Ayatollah Khomeini. He is no more. So now this orders are given to a unit which is based in say, West Azerbaijan. The West Azerbaijan people know I have to do this task. So they start targeting that area. The people are out of control. That was pre-thought about by the Iranians that we would be hit like that. So that's the issue here. The second point I was to raise is that target list. Now we've seen the target list. I mentioned about target list. The differentiation being carried out. The Israelis are hitting the military and the regime. and the Americans are hitting infrastructure and also wanting to protect the oil. But the point, next one I would say is that you hit a weaker enemy. What does a weaker enemy do? Now we go back to history. Vietnam was hit by the Americans, previously by the French. They went back into tunnels underground and they cut the legs off of the Americans. That, you know, Kuchi tunnels, etc. You see in Vietnam, it's a kind of war you fought. So a asymmetrically weak nation, a Taliban. Said Taliban knew you can't fight the Americans; they are too strong. So Taliban fought a asymmetric warfare. Similarly, the Mujahideen fought a different warfare with USSR. So a weaker enemy fights with a weaker. It responds on its own. Iran is a civilizational country. It has to respond. It is civilization dictates it. It's a martyrdom-based country. So, you know, Iranians have come out with their own strategy of hitting. Now they know they don't have an ICBM to hit the Americans. They don't even have a missile to hit the aircraft carriers which are located in Mediterranean Ocean, Mediterranean Sea, or located in Persian Gulf. They're too far away. So they can only hit American assets located in various places. So they said, okay, we hit the American bases first, right from Cyprus to Turkey up to Oman. And then they said we hit the areas where the bases have been vacated and the hotels and the banks and the other establishments which the Americans have been utilizing in these states, and they will hit that. So the response part of it. Now there is a question that did Israel and United States underassess what the Americans will do in response to what the Iranians will do in response to what the initial strikes. There is a possibility that there was a feel that it was not thought through in a manner that what will be the total response. The total response of Iranians is very measured, very well calculated, very well planned, and it has been planned because they knew they are a weaker enemy. They knew they cannot hit. Now, see, sir, not one drone from Israel has hit, from Iran has hit Israel in 3 weeks. Not one drone. Israel has been able to destroy all drones being thrown at it because it's slow moving. What Israel is being hit with only missiles. The missiles are ballistic, they're faster, and you know they are hypersonics partly. So they are Iran is able to hit it. So you know they have to know, yeah, if I have to hit it, I don't have the weaponry of drone. I can only use drones. They produce 100 drones a day in an underground factory, including the engines, the Shahid series, and you know Shahid later series 230, 238 also. So they are hitting by drones the close by target and using missiles to the larger targets far away. It's a very well planned thing what the Iranians are doing. So probably these people did not understand the kind of response. The third issue is escalation. Fourth issue, escalation control. Did the Americans and the Israelis think about escalation control? We, when we did Op Sindoor, thought about escalation control. How will we control ourselves? How will the war terminate? We can't have an open-ended war. This issue of escalation control died the day the entire top regime was killed. In a nation which is civilizational, you take the whole regime out. Then there is a nationalistic fervor. And nationalistic fervor forces you to take action. Now you can't say there ought to be escalation control so simply. So what they did on the day one of killing the top-notch regime has actually backfired in a manner that now there is no escalation control. Did they do any collateral damage control? Between the two of them, now point rightly brought about by Professor Sachdeva, that President Trump says, I was not informed of hitting of South Pass. Bibi also says, okay, I did not take clearance from President Trump. The fact is, if it is true that they did not take clearance, then the issue of collateral damage destruction control has not been discussed. You can't say that which will be hit and which will not be hit. Who decided on destroying the entire oil infrastructure created in Tehran? The whole Tehran was having acid rain. It is so much. Somebody take a decision. The Israelis are the ones who are targeting this. So Israelis are targeting it. Has it been okayed with the target list given to Central Command of the United States? I deem so that it can't happen without their knowledge. My last point here is, what is cessation of hostilities? How does this war finish? Now, this war finishing last 24 hours is giving some hints. Mr. Besant says that we will allow Iranians to sell the oil. Now, Mr. Besant doesn't speak anything out of his hat. He's a Treasury Secretary. You know, he has a meaning behind it. He says, okay, we will allow Iran to sell. How allow Iran to sell is an issue here. The fact is that it will go berserk and out of control if it is not held back. Even the Iranians have held back partially since last 24 hours, and so have the Israelis and Americans held back. It is not what was happening 48 hours ago. It happened yesterday night. Is there a thought process? Are there some scenes, some people behind the scenes talking? It looks it. It looks it that there is some kind of a work on. As it is today, Qataris have said it will cost us $20 billion per year for 5 years to set this gas field of theirs into track. All this money will go to the corporations that are American corporations will start working on all these things again. So the Americans have already bedded themselves inside all these infrastructure of Aramco and all the other infrastructure that have been damaged because their corporations, whether the upstream ones or the downstream ones like Halliburton and all, will all come in now like crows, and the Americans will force down the Gulf that the money to do this will be provided by these countries, but the work will be undertaken by the American corporations. So willy-nilly, by the time this thing ends in maybe 1 week, 2 weeks, or 1 month, the Americans will be in control of the oil resources of the Gulf and the gas resources of the Gulf in a very big manner, which I presume was their aim when they started the war. This was what they were. They will control it. They will control the dollar. Money will be. See, many issues are us says that we want to buy from Iran. We can't give money to Iran. Money has to be paid through New York. And minute you paid money to New York, they know that you have a trade. We can't buy weapons from Russia because there is no bank in India who has a branch outside India who will be able to function, except maybe Canara Bank and Syndicate Bank. I mean, merged banks. They don't have overseas branches. They can do a trade. Every other bank which has got a branch in United States will be sealed that day in case it transfers money across to Russia or transfer money across to Iran. So, you know, all this will now come back and fall into the American lap. And finally, my good guess is that another 2 months, the gentleman who will be having the hearty laugh will be President Trump. I'll rest here, sir.
Thank you. Very clear and interesting analysis from objectives to end game to how this will end. But you seem to believe that it is in the final stages and it is likely to end. But if Iran regime is not brought down, then Iranian oil continues to be controlled by Iran. And why would other Saudi countries be willing to give up all oil powers to the US?
Very interesting, ma'am. The only way is that to stop this war, this kind of squeeze, they will bring it on to them. Otherwise, they'll keep hitting. They are not in the Gulf. Americans are not in the Persian Gulf. Their ships are outside space of outside Hormuz. They have parked themselves into Arabian Sea. They can't be hit. They will keep hitting. And the drones, now, ma'am, it is not even costing $35,000 a drone. To Iranians, it's got $7,000. You know, it is so cheap a thing that they can keep throwing 10 drones against Saudi Arabia. Even if 7 are down, 3 only land up on ground, 3 do grave damage. These countries are fun and frolic countries. They have a good time. They're sheikdoms. They don't want to leave their sheikdoms and start fighting wars of think kind. They will one day say, okay, Trump, bhai sahab, aapko kya chahiye? Aap maan jaiye, hum maan jaiye. I'm putting it bluntly, ma'am.
Yeah, so I don't know. But the thing is that they seem to be not supporting the one country, also Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, if Iran is being attacked, the population must, those 300 schoolgirls that were killed, I mean, surely the population in the Arabian countries must be, very against the US and this war.
All this while, when the Pakistanis attacked us in 65 or 71, and 48, they crazed a hullabulla in J&K that population, you must rise and fight against us. When the Russians attacked Ukraine 4-5 years ago, the north of Dnipro River is a Russian-speaking population. They asked the Russian Kharkiv and these old cities and Sumy. So they asked the population to rise up against Ukrainians and support the invasion of. It doesn't happen like that. Finally, people have their own mental mind on patriotism and nationalism. It functions in some different levels. So neither the Iranians got up and supported the Americans, neither the Russians who were settled in Ukraine got up, neither the Kashmiris got up. It doesn't happen like this. So I think, these are sociological issues which are outside the realm of our discussion here.
Also, the Americans seem very reluctant to actually lose manpower. They're not their own ships. Why don't they park them in the Strait of Hormuz? They're afraid of being accessible to drones and so on.
So, ma'am, Straits of Hormuz is not 30 kilometers wide. It is actually 3-4 kilometers wide. The rest of the sea, the ships are not possible. That 3 to 4 kilometers wide channel is closer to the mountainous areas of Iran, which are day before yesterday, it threw a 5,000 kg bomb on top of that area. Even the artillery can take off a ship. You don't require missiles and drones. You just have to hide an artillery in one of these crevices in the mountains and take it off. So, no, that's why European countries, nobody wants to touch it. Hormuz is not defendable. You can't protect yourself. It's a very, very difficult strait. It is not like other straits. It's not like Malacca. It's not like Malacca.
No, so what I'm saying is it seems as if the US is not going to be able to declare victory. And they might be looking for a way out without, I don't think
I have been writing on this issue of victory in the current war. What is victory? I think, ma'am, we are very difficult today in the present day circumstances to define the word victory or winning. I mean, you can't say territory is winning. You can't say destruction is winning. Even if you destroyed, Taliban was destroyed, Afghanistan destroyed, but Taliban is back into chair. You can't even say Taliban was winning. So I don't think you can just put a banner saying mission accomplished and just get on with it without any accomplishment.
Right. So I hope that is what will happen, and at least we'll see some peace return and oil start flowing again. So is Professor Pasha here, Charan? You're on mute, Charan. Professor Pasha, if he's here, we'd like to hear from
Professor Pasha is here.
Yeah. I don't see him, but he's there.
Professor Pasha.
Please give us your comments. Please go ahead.
Professor Pasha, I've already introduced you and mentioned about your research in the Middle East. So, as you have seen, that Professor Goyal is in the chair, General Rakesh Sharma and Professor Gulshan Sachdeva have just completed their presentations. And over to you. That's exactly what Professor Goyal is saying.
Yeah, we especially want to know your prognosis of how this is going to escalate or terminate. How will it terminate, and how long it will last, and also what will be the balance of power in the region, since you're a Middle East expert. I think you're on mute. We can't hear you. Can you hear him, Sharon?
No, I can't hear him too. Professor Pasha, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, unmute yourself, please.
No, we can't still hear you.
Can you unmute from your, can you ask Vivek or PhD?
Vivek, can you quickly help?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Goyal or Dr. Charan and my colleague, Professor Gulshan, Sachdeva, and the previous panelists. You see, I don't know how much time I have because the program is scheduled to end by 5:30, or we are flexible a little bit. Hello?
Yeah,
Professor-
Charan, we have some time to go on after 6.
No,
How much
I
time
can't
would you
hear
like to
you
speak?
people. There's
Yeah,
some
can you hear
issue.
me now? Can
Yeah.
you hear me now?
Professor Goyal, we can hear you.
But he is saying he can't hear us. He wants to know how long he can talk.
Professor Pasha, Professor Goyal, would you agree we are a little flexible, though we had said
Yeah,
5:30, but now
Yes,
that,
sure.
we are flexible, Professor Pasha.
Okay.
You're flexible on time, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. You see,
Hmm.
I would like to highlight at least three points and then see if there is time to see the likely scenario for an emerging security architecture. The first point we have to keep in mind this present conflict between Iran, Israel, and the United States. You see, it is not just a recent one or the nuclear issue. I'll take 1 or 2 minutes to give you a background. It started with at least 1979 revolution when the mullahs overthrew the Shah of Iran and installed the Islamic Republic with Khomeini as the leader. Before that, the United States, Israel, both had very close relations with the Shah of Iran, and the oil was flowing to their desired interest. What happened was this was an earthquake for both the countries because the new Islamic regime completely cut off relations with Israel, and they handed over the Israeli embassy to the PLO. And the American embassy was captured by the students, and the diplomats were held for nearly 444 days. So the enmity and bitterness, it goes back to 1979. And since that period, both the countries have been working systematically on regime change. They want to overthrow the Islamic regime established by the mullahs. That is the starting point. There is no denying of the fact that this regime change agenda of both these countries has been fundamental. The first thing both the countries did was to encourage Saddam Hussein to attack Iran in September 1980, which the Iran-Iraq war took place for almost 9 years, and millions of lives were lost or injured. And it was a sort of no victor, no vanquished. Although Iran, which was a weaker party, it survived, although extensive damage, including the chemical weapons and etc. So the fear from Iran was not only to the Israelis and the Iranians, and the Gulf countries on the other side, from Kuwait to Oman. So they are all monarchies, and they are partners with the United States and earlier with the British. And they have security agreements, bases of these countries. And they perceived that this Islamic revolution, which overthrew the monarchy, is now trying to export the revolution to these monarchies. These are total rulers, and they control and rule these countries, many of them against the wishes of the people, especially in Bahrain. And the revenues, they feel that it belongs to the ruling families, royal families. Just to give you one example, in Qatar in mid-90s, the ruler overthrew his father, and he took over the reins of power in Doha, and he found that the treasury is empty. His father, who was the earlier ruler, had kept the entire gas money, oil money in his personal account, in his Swiss account, where he was holidaying when he was overthrown. And that is the kind of a situation. And in Saudi Arabia also, the billions of dollars which they get is used not so much, but to build palaces and buy weapons and to buy regime security. This applies to all. So there is perpetual tension between the people and the rulers rulers feel that our country is not suitable for democracy, rule of law, independent judiciary, so on and so forth. We are the total rulers. So this fear of all of these partners led to any and every attempt to undermine the Islamic regime. And it continued with the assassination of Iranian prime ministers, presidents, and other leaders. And in 2003, the nuclear issue was brought to the forefront, that Iran is secretly preparing a nuclear capability. And that was brought to the IAEA notice, and it went to the United Nations, and the sanctions, economic sanctions were imposed by the UN. Although before 2003, the US sanctions were already in place, which had crippled Iran to quite an extent. So the economic sanctions began hitting or biting Iran to a very large extent. And it is during these two events that Iran decided to develop its military capability. During the Iran-Iraq war and soon after the 2003 nuclear issue, that they must have, because they are being denied under the NPT, which they have signed, the legitimate right to use nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. And from the very start, the leaders have issued the fatwa that they will not acquire nuclear weapon. It is only for peaceful purposes, etc. But as Netanyahu has admitted today, for the last 42 years, he has been advocating that Iran is a mortal danger as early as in 1996, before the United Nations and the entire body. So this campaign was seen as a main attempt to bring down the Iranian regime, and more so because after Israel invaded Lebanon, Iran helped in the emergence of Hezbollah. That became a mortal danger on the northern part of Israel, where skirmishes were taking place, and Israel was suffering on a daily basis because of the attacks from the Lebanese border. Then you had Iranian support to Syria, Bashar al-Assad, who was also armed and supported by the Iranians. So the axis of resistance emerged because of Israeli actions, and Iran took the policy of offense is the best form of defense. So apart from building their capability, including nuclear, they stretched out to the entire region, vulnerable regions of both the Israelis and the hostile Arab regimes, which had inflicted deep damage on the Iranians. Nevertheless, secretly, they were developing their conventional military capability, and the West hardly knew what is going on because of the secretive nature of their program under the guidance of the late Ali Khamenei. So all this, came to the fore when Iran's nuclear program was found in Isfahan, Natanz, and the other side, which was also attacked last year by Trump and Israel. So this nuclear issue has been used as a pretext to overthrow the regime. It is now very clear that Iran signed the JCPOA, which was abrogated by Trump in his first term, and for no good reason. It was endorsed by the UN Security Council as a valid document, but he tore it off. And Iran knew that one day or the other it will be a victim. And that is how the situation is as it is today. Now, the immediate goal of both Israel and the United States was regime change, which they tried towards the end of December and January. For various reasons, it didn't work out as they tried earlier, despite the extensive presence of both the countries in Iran plus MI6. So in the present context, what has become apparent is in the initial 4 days until Mustafa Khamenei was elected, Iran's policy was action-reaction. Americans, Israelis were completely hitting and trying to crush Iran, but they reacted in a way not just against Israel, but also against US targets, which they had made it very clear that if Iran is attacked, we will target the US facilities from Iraq to Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE and Oman, plus Jordan. So all of these countries were targeted. First was the first layer of air defense, radars. They knocked out one by one in a step-by-step approach. And then they attacked the airfields, air bases in all of these countries. And their main target was the Fifth Fleet located in Bahrain, although most of the ships had been withdrawn. But the infrastructure of that and the central command in Al Udeid was the most extensive. And this was coordinated with software in Dubai. So that is how you have these three receiving heavy Iranian bombarded. The peripheral attacks have taken place in Iraq because they have their allies, Popular Mobilization Force, and Riyadh as a warning that should not incite. The Sultan Air Base, of course, has taken a hit, but the extensive damage which Qatar, Bahrain, and UAE has suffered, we have not seen in Saudi Arabia, and hardly any in Oman, except for the false flag attack in Al-Alas oil depot and other facilities. So the first 4 days were a complete disaster as far as Israel and America were concerned. And so far they have targeted 7,000 places, both in Tehran and the rest of the 31 provinces. But in spite of this, the military capability, especially the missile capability and drones, they have not been able to neutralize. And after Mustafa took over as supreme leader, they have been on the offensive. For every one attack, they are launching waves. So far, I think more than 58 waves they have launched against this entire targets. And there is no evidence to show that it is slowing down. Because as one of our panelists mentioned, it is decentralized. The entire command structure of the military is decentralized, and it is primarily the IRGC which is running the show. The Iranian Defense Ministry has hardly made a statement, and it is the IRGC with whom Mustafa was very close when his father was alive, and he had built up contacts with almost all commanders. And it was they who bulldozed his appointment as the supreme leader. From all the information I have gathered, at least 18 members of the 80+ Assembly of Experts were opposed to Mustafa because they are senior in the hierarchical order, Ayatollahs, senior Ayatollahs, learned people, theology, and so on and so forth. Whereas he is far, far younger, and his theological capacity is not seen as very highly achieved. So in that way, it is now the IRGC which is virtually through Mujtaba is in control of Iran and the military operations. And there are two other statements. One is the president, after 10 days, I think, he apologized to the GCC countries. We are sorry, we made a mistake by attacking our neighbors. We want friendly relations. Immediately the IRGC neutralized his statement, saying that no, we will continue our attacks until the Americans are decimated in these areas and they are finally expelled. And the second one was the statement made by Ali Larijani, who is a person who is in favor of nuclear negotiations, peace with other countries, and a pacifist, like the president. Whereas the others who have taken over are seen as hardliners who have consolidated their power. So Ali Larijani is out of the scene, and the hardliners have consolidated their force, and they are running the shot and the war. And they are in no mood to compromise, despite President's three demands that US bases should be withdrawn, compensation, and no more threats of war against Iran. So this struggle for power now is very clear in favor of the hardliners, and they are demanding not only a rejection of the ceasefire. Putin and Russia are very close allies of Iran, and President Trump dialed Moscow for this ceasefire along with Turkey and Egypt and Oman. But to say no to Russia, I think it shows how far the internal coup or power struggle has now changed the face of the war, which has shaken the United States and much more Israel. And for the last 20 days, Israel has been under continuous bombardment, not just in Haifa, Tel Aviv, or Beersheba, but the entire length and breadth country, military targets, civilian military targets. And what is shocking is to the both aggressors is that they are coordinating with Hezbollah. Supposing the Hezbollah attacks Israel or northern Israel at 4 o'clock, the Iranians also are attacking with massive barrage of drones and missiles, earlier the crude form and now hypersonic and supersonic. So there is complete coordination between Hezbollah and Iran, which is devastating Israel, the military targets, at a rate of almost 200 rockets every 24 hours. I mean, the Israeli intelligence, as they admitted, has taken them by surprise. Never they expected so much lethal power and coordination between the two, because they assumed that last year, until the ceasefire in October, they had degraded first by eliminating the leadership, first and second tier, and later on by heavy military pounding which Hezbollah took. But it has survived not only in the above the Litani River, but below the Litani River, where daily skirmishes are taking place. Israelis are losing the Markava top-notch tanks, and many of the soldiers are also getting killed and injured, and Hezbollah continues to use its firepower. So that apart, you see the GCC countries have now their security architecture with the United States has been shaken very badly, and they are looking for way out. Recently, Saudi Arabia called a meeting of the regional allies from Egypt to Turkey to Azerbaijan. Nothing came out of it except a bombastic statement. And neither any of these countries are listening, like the NATO countries, to Trump's urging for breaking of the naval blockade. So now what Israel, America, of course, is now exhausted the targets which it wanted, and it's in a withdrawal mode. It's on the back foot. There are two indications. One is Trump some time back when Israel hit the Tehran oil grids, tanks, whatever. He said, you know, this is a major blow to civilians. It should not have been done. And virtually he reprimanded Netanyahu for not consulting. Although I don't believe that the United States was not informed, but the range and the magnitude of the attack, showing live pictures of smoke billowing out and the streets filled with oil, etc. At least 3 million people have been affected who have left that place because it has become unlivable. The second one is, he said, if we want, we could take out very soon the Iranian electric grid, which will keep the entire country in darkness. He said, we don't want to hurt the Iranian people. And the third one is the recent Israeli attack on Paras gas fields and Trump's statement that this was also wrong, and Israel will never repeat this in future, in bold. This is something very rare. The acrimony and differences between the two leaders has come into the open, which necessitated the press conference yesterday by the Israeli Prime Minister. Whether he's alive or AI generated, we don't know. But he did try to show that Trump has been supporting Israel from the very beginning, even before he became president. What has shocked him is the lack of progress on regime change and in the aims and goals of Netanyahu concerning Iran, civilian and military. Secondly, within Israel, there is much upheaval. He's facing the elections very soon, like Trump in October, November. And people have turned against him. You said it is only 3 or 4 days and we'll conclude very quickly. But 20 days plus, people are living in fear, in shelter, without proper medical facilities. Even the basements have been taken over for treatment of injured and parking lots. There is utter chaos and you know, I mean, many of the areas of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, I hear that people have formed groups, armed groups are guarding that others should not come and occupy their places because there is acute shortage of people who want to take shelter. So there is virtual, you know, uprising against Netanyahu and the government, apart from the disaffection in the military also, not only over his unachieved goal to defeat Hamas and take over Gaza, but also because of the economic cost which Iran has been bearing. Yesterday, he proposed a $850 billion emergency military budget, like $200 billion Trump is presenting before the Senate. The third fear of Netanyahu is the American president's changing approach. He didn't expect that he would rebuke him so publicly, and the differences between the two allies would become global and public. And he knows that MAGA support to Trump is weakening, and even the support in America to Israel is also declining because of the economic hardships. See, already last year I was there in US. In most of the states, central and eastern, it was around $3 a barrel. A barrel is about 100 and little over 150 liters. So now it has suddenly jumped to $4, and it is almost $8 in California and the West. So you can imagine, and inflation is also rising. Walmart and Target and various other stores are running out of supplies, and the people are facing acute hardships along with the immigration policy and racist policy of the ICE, and which is creating. So Netanyahu is afraid that this widening gap should not become public, and it should not hurt, because it is hurting his own image that your own close ally is distancing yourself because of your unachievable goals, neither in Gaza, nor in Lebanon, nor in Iran, nor in Qatar. Everywhere it has flopped. So in that way, this is the situation where we are. Iran is launching hundreds of missiles and drones, and the demands, they are adamant that these three main demands, and the IRGC statement that you have started the war and we will end, and they are not in a mood to listen to anybody. Just a few minutes to see how the future is going to unfold. See, there are 2 points. One is short term. Most of these Gulf states like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Turkey, they are coming together for a possible grouping because of various reasons. But you have Kuwait and Oman taking a different view, and the third approach of UAE, which wants solid relations to continue with the United States and Israel, no matter what happens. Just yesterday, they have signed a big $1 billion deal with the United States to import more weapons. So Saudi Arabia has lost its clout over its smaller GCC neighbors, and they are unable to articulate in a unified manner how to approach their vulnerability. One approach which is being suggested is we include Iran as part of the Gulf architecture, which Oman has been suggesting for a long time. Saudi Arabia is suggesting Turkey also should be included along with Pakistan. So this is one scenario which is unfolding. So there are conflicting pulls and pressures on the issue of United States of America and what Trump has been doing. As we see the differences between Saudi Arabia and Yemen over Saudi Arabia and UAE over Yemen, this is likely to escalate in the future, and it will be very difficult for the GCC countries to come to a consensus. And the most vulnerable Gulf country is Bahrain, where, as you might have seen, the continuous bombardment there has brought hundreds and thousands of people on the streets cheering and denouncing the Al Khalifa monarchy, which is Sunni, and majority of the people are Shia, who have been oppressed and discriminated, they feel. So in that way, there is going to be internal turmoil, not only against the Khalifas in Bahrain, but also the turmoil which was already engulfing Kuwait is likely to intensify, because after the Iraqi invasion, you know, the Kuwaiti National Assembly has been dissolved by more than 10 times by the Amir there, because the National Assembly wants the Prime Minister's office to be in the hands of the National Assembly, which the royal family doesn't want to give up. So the alliance with the United States and Saudi Arabia also is being attacked by the National Assembly. Similar is the case in Oman. During the Arab Springs, you must have seen how riots broke out in Oman, because it has less oil and less military capability. It is also more or less vulnerable. So the Saudis also are vulnerable, because, you know, we think that it is united, but it is actually divided and in a conflict to 4 parts. The eastern part is the Dhahran, Dammam, Ras Tanura triangle, where bulk of the oil is located, oil refineries, pipelines, which Iran has been targeting, and the uprising has taken place by the Shias against the Saud family or the ruling family for a long time. And on the southwestern part, the Yemenis are up in arms because of the destruction Saudi Arabia and UAE has caused. And on the western side, you have the Hijazis, Mecca, Medina, who are involved in the Hajj business, Umrah business, trade, commerce who have not really adhered to the Wahhabi creed of Islam, which the central Saudi Arabian Riyadh area, which is controlled by the royal family. So, these are areas which are held by Saudi rulers, virtually by four dictatorial policies, because all these GCC countries don't believe in democracy. So only repression and authoritarian policies are holding these countries, and the UAE also is a very vulnerable federation. Although it appears strong and so on and so forth, there have been very strong differences between Sharjah and the Abu Dhabi leadership, and Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And in the Yemen war, which UAE got involved militarily, most of the soldiers who died on the front were from Ras Al Khaimah, Fujairah, and Ajman, which are poorer parts of the federation. So there is resentment not only with the MBZ's policy of close ties with Israel in all directions, but also for the stepmotherly treatment treated to other Fujairah. So the internal turmoil in these countries also cannot be ignored, and the long-term thing is just 2 points. What is the alternative? We see this region will see oil and gas for the foreseeable future. There is no denying of the fact that almost 48 to 50% of the oil and gas is located. Bulk of the gas after Russia is found in Iran, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and other Gulf countries. So as long as oil and gas is there, my own view is that after some time, when the clouds pass away, these countries, at least most of them, GCC, will go back to the only architecture which they had for the last almost 50 years, and that is with the US and whatever is left of its promises, in which Israel also could be a junior partner. I don't see any chance for Russia or China or even Turkey or Pakistan or Egypt, or they have all tried all these options. It has not worked during the Yemen crisis, during the Saddam Hussein crisis, and so on and so forth. So these countries whose economy is tied to the dollar and to the American economy because of the petrodollars investments, after some time they will find the situation is hopeless, and Iran has been radicalized, and it is in the hands, if the regime survives, and they will go back to the reassurances. The first sign is yesterday, UAE has signed a multi-billion-dollar arms deal. So the regime change has really taken a 180-degree turn, and the hardliner policy, I think, would continue, although they don't have the complete support of all the 93 million Shia people or the ethnic minorities like Azerbaijanis, Baluchis, and Kurds, so on and so forth. But through their apparatus of IRGC, Basij, and other intelligence factors, I think they would continue to dominate. And, the only option if the regime falls is guerrilla war. Which we may see all along the Gulf, from Bushehr, Abadan, Kharg Island to the Strait of Hormuz. And this reminds me of the British, who intruded into this Gulf in the 18th century and destroyed the Arab traders, Persian traders' livelihood with India and the other Indian Ocean area. And they took over both the sides of the Gulf. In fact, on the Persian side, where there were a large number of Arabs who were evacuated, like ethnic cleansing. And these people from both Persian and Arab coast were still attacking the British, which was branded as piracy. So ultimately, the British had to install these tribes as rulers in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and Qatar and UAE and so on and so forth. So in that way, they want to remain total rulers in this area, and the old Arab-Persian conflict whoever rules Tehran, the kind of destruction which they have seen, economic misery by sanctions, regime change agenda, wars last year, this year, the Iranians are not going to forget, whether they are under hardline or new regime or whatever. This animosity will remain deep-rooted, and with the Arabs, this animosity will remain because they see them as collaborators with Israel and America, who have attacked them and ruined their civilizational achievements and economic gains, although they have rich oil and gas resources and huge competent human resources. So all this will make Iran still a potential power. And with the backing of Russia and China, if they are determined, I have been seeing reports which are now indicating that Russia is going to go much further than what it has. And China also is considering elevating its support to Iran. So in that way, it has backing not only from two nuclear powers against America and non-declared nuclear power in Israel, but its determination, the martyrdom issue, they are fighting an existential battle. They are prepared to die to the last, like the Hezbollah. No matter what happens by Israel in 2016 now, they have not given up. Any amount of pressure by the Lebanese government has not disarmed, and they continue. And if things get worse, the Houthis also are likely to choke the Bab al-Mandab and Red Sea as they did for the last 2.5 years. I think I will stop here. I wanted to comment on India, but that's a larger issue. My only comment is we are out of the game. Still, we can retrieve our position if our leaders could send a condolence message, though late, to Khamenei's death, or the children who were killed in school, or to the sailors who were killed near Sri Lankan border, near our border, or to the war, unjust war which is inflicted. But instead, we voted against them in the United Nations, and Prime Minister's message to the President has not been answered. And Foreign Minister, at least Iran's Foreign Minister, has called at least 4 times to call an emergency BRICS meeting. That also India has not taken the initiative because we are firmly in the camp of Israel and America. We don't want to take. 2 days before the war, Prime Minister was in Israel. What message does it give? That these two enemies of Iran, India is hobnobbing, and not a single ship except 2 on very strange grounds the Iranians released. It was a request from the foreign minister, and the message from Iran was that keeping in view the welfare hardship of the Indian people, we as a humanitarian gesture, we are releasing these 2 ships not to cause any more pain to the Indian people, not as a message to the request. You can see how much anger is flowing from Iran. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think the message also said Indians are our friends. I mean, we have generations of settlers here. The Parsis are from Iran. And so I think our government is trying to balance and emphasize dialogue. I believe as...
I really am struggling to hear you. There is some
okay, sorry.
audio problem. If
Maybe
you can
from my side, there's
speak closely to
Sharon,
the
you can
mic,
hear
perhaps
me?
I might catch it. Make some sense.
I can hear you clearly.
Yeah. So anyway, your views on Israel, the damage taking place there, you have some data sources because there are no journalists allowed. You're not getting any information from Israel, the media.
Can you repeat briefly what you
Sharon,
want?
can you repeat the question to me?
So Professor Goyal is saying that is there any data, because journalists are not allowed in that area, how authentic are your analysis and your data? That's the point Professor Goyal is making.
On
Yes.
Israel.
On
Yes,
Israel.
it
On
is
Israel.
mostly based out on what the CNN or Washington Post or Wall Street Journal are reporting themselves. You scan through all their presses, they have been openly saying that they have been advised not to show the targets hit or areas which have suffered. But many of their correspondents also have been there speaking, of showing the visuals of the extensive damage and other people. I mean, I don't believe in press TV or other territory which are propagandists, but at least we can get a sense of what is happening in Iran, in the military field, in the civilian field, and in the shelters. We have seen how people are, rushing in large numbers. There is shortage, and
No,
Ben
in
Gurion
Iran,
Airport is virtually
journalists are
closed.
allowed, but in Israel, he was talking about extensive bombing in Israel.
Professor
So
See, we
Goyal,
that
don't have hard data. I don't have access to people there. How many air bases have been attacked? How many? We only hear that Mossad headquarters have been hit and in the southern
no, the
part
damage
near
in
Beersheba.
Israel,
Sorry?
the damage in Israel,
Yes,
Israel is not allowing any journalists.
yes.
So how, from where are you getting your information on damage in Israel?
From these open sources.
Hmm.
You make a point to read Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Bloomberg. You get all the information. Visuals also you can see videos. They are showing live. They're saying that we are not allowed to give the number of casualties, but the visuals are very clear from the Ben Gurion airport.
Good. So it really seems that they did not estimate this kind of retaliation and persistence and ability to survive. And as you are saying, I think this war, even if there is a regime change, it will just result in continuous guerrilla warfare. So it seems the best option is if the current signs and they do withdraw, announce ceasefire and so on. But I leave it to the experts. I will, since we are already over time, there are some questions here. People are really appreciating the richness of this discussion and saying you don't see that in the normal media. So I will just pose two questions and give 2 minutes for each panelist or longer if you like to respond. One is there's a question in the chat box, what are the implications for India? And second is that do you think that the current signs which our panelists have spoken of suggest that the war might, as it is this, with the current, there might be some sort of ceasefire?
Yeah, if I can take the question, if you allow me. You see, I've given what India can do still. It's still not late, better late than never. But the implications are now immediate. People are on the streets waiting for the cylinder. Prices have gone. I'm speaking here from Bangalore. Getting food in restaurants also is very difficult. People who have one cylinder, lower middle class people, they are struggling. They have to pay over 2,000 rupees for a cylinder. And the commercial cylinder has gone to 6,000 yesterday. So gas is already in acute shortage, and oil may not be in such great shortage, but if the tankers and others who are bringing nearly 2 million barrels from Kuwait and Iraq and Saudi Arabia and UAE, if they are prevented, I
Yes,
don't
that
think
is
Russia.
true. Oil will be a big issue for us. But I think the question was addressed to General Sharma in terms
Okay,
of Pakistan
okay,
and the border,
I stop
and
here.
yeah, if there are any implications for India.
I would like to put some question.
Okay, sir, please go ahead, sir.
Please go ahead. Put your
Yeah,
question.
we have to discuss a lot on Middle East. But Middle East is something which we can never completely understand. And the implications only will be felt by India. Our focus should be on the preparations for the Indian economy. Does India have any policy of any outcome? Whatever the outcome from the Middle East, does India have a policy? Or is there any preparation going on by India to face the outcomes? Because
Okay, thank you. General Sharma, if you could take this question and the other general border implications for India.
So, ma'am, who knows the future? I mean, we don't even know what's going to happen tonight. To talk about future is very difficult. The fact is that India is in such a difficult state that taking sides on either side of Gulf is not simple.
that is why I say, whatever the outcome, India has to prepare herself.
Yeah, so the point is that on the UA side of the Gulf, we have about 10 crore people. I mean, you just can't avoid those people are there. And we have also to great dependence on Iran. Iran has dependence on Indian basmati rice, etc., the food grains that we supply. So we have relations with everybody there. And you just cannot say that India supported a United Nations resolution. What do we do? I mean, we were stuck into a cusp. I agree with the point of view that we could have condoled the demise of the Ayatollah on the day one itself. He was a leader. We are leaders, I met him. So we could have condoled it. But here we are stuck into a cusp. What can India do? I mean, if you ask me, ma'am, frankly, we can do nothing.
I'm
There's
not
not
asking
involved.
something, what can India do? Whatever the implication, what should be the preparation in their tax hardship for India? That is the issue.
So the point is that we need to create much more strategic petroleum reserves. Now it's absolutely clear that what we have is grossly insufficient. And to say such things don't happen, such things do happen. We need to create the strategic petroleum reserves like what China has got. They have such substantial reserves that they can handle for quite some time, and they have alternatives available. We need to get alternatives going as soon as possible. Why not? We should start with Saudi Arabia, which is supplying oil by pipelines from the Gulf Coast to Red Sea and draw the oil from Red Sea across the Bab el Mandeb. Presently, Houthis have not made that thing. So one way is to go. Second is that there are pipelines coming out at not in the Persian Gulf but in the Arabian Sea of Oman, which is south of Duqm. So we there is supply lines available on oil available at Oman. Oman, we have best of relationships. So can we work with Oman to take some oils there? And of course, we have to start moving with Nigeria and many other countries to draw it. Russia, we have already a relationship. We have investment in Sakhalin oil fields of Russia. So we can now draw across from the west, from the south, through the South China Sea and draw oil from there. So we have to look for alternatives available because our strategic petroleum reserves are also insufficient. In another 1 month or so, a month and a half, there will be dire straits in India, and we will have problem of rationing. And I think the President Trump will also understand that the effect of this war was it not localized as probably what the Americans and the Israelis thought. They thought, it will be like what happened in the 12-day war in June, where Iran responded back very lightly. But what Iran's response here was that they were prepared for it. They planned for it in the last 8 months, and they have taken the Gulf and the Hormuz to task, which means that now the Americans have to understand that people are anxious all over the world. People are anxious against what's happening into. And my last point is that the best of friends of United States, the NATO, they have shown spine. For once, Europe has shown spine and said, "Sorry, we will not support you in this venture." So I think good sense should prevail.
We should not be talking about orders all the time. I'm talking about India.
So we told you,
And
sir.
we should not reduce our policy to a single item. Now
So
we are facing the petroleum issue.
yes, sir.
But
So,
it goes much beyond petroleum. What should be the ethnic implications of the war is not something which India can take care. And within India, there are many issues to be addressed by ourselves. And Indian borders, looking at Indian borders as a whole, there are so many issues to be addressed. Is India preparing herself to face any outcome in the future? And any outcome, not only this one, any other outcome, so that India prepares herself for any outcome. That is the issue before us before India.
So, sir,
We
you're
should not
venturing
reduce
into.
the issue to only petroleum, to a single item. It goes much beyond that.
I get the point. Your point also now it goes beyond the subject for today, and it goes towards what will happen if some other front is opened as far as India is concerned. And let me assure you, sir, that these issues are being addressed in the best manner. It is not an open source issue to say what will we do with China or with Pakistan or what will happen with Myanmar or other countries. And but there are issues that are being addressed in some manner, and I will hesitate to take a step forward on these issues and leave it for the people in uniform serving today and the government, which is well addressing these issues in this matters.
Yeah, thank you very much. Professor Sachdeva, could you please?
Yeah,
give your
I
final
think, just listening to all other panelists and also to, Professor Amar Yunan and his question about India, I think there are three specific issues for which India should be really preparing, and I think to some extent they are preparing. One is really about energy issues. It's quite certain now that some of the things which we did perhaps may not be enough. We need to do more. Like, IEA members, they have about roughly about their mandate is that you have to have 90 days reserves. We do not have 90-day reserves. I mean, at least about something around 40, 50 days, and that also I'm not sure to what extent they were already filled. But the oil is still, at the moment, is still not such a crucial issue. Now, LPG, suddenly now we have 100 million new customers in the last few years because of Ujjwala Yojana and everything else. Perhaps we were not fully prepared, looks like, to handle long-term contingency of that because we didn't have reserves for more than few days, I think, for LPG because we never expected the thing can be disrupted. So I'm sure the government is now really working to look into this LPG issue. That also would be. And then, of course, the related issues concerning how this will really affect inflation if the oil prices are going to stabilize at a relatively higher level. And then its impact and pressure also on the rupee. I think for that, most of the policymakers are quite fully aware. And then, of course, the well-being of all 10 million people, those who are there, because if there is any kind of disturbance, suddenly large number of people have to be evacuated. And India, I think, has a solid experience in the past, but it's a huge number. So it's not an easy thing. Even if there is some disturbance in one country, suddenly you see just few days there was a problem in Dubai airport or something, and that has lingered for many, many days. The whole this sector has been affected still very badly. So for that, I think the government has relatively working on this. And I think with the past experience of dealing, as Professor Ashima was mentioning earlier, we do have certain understanding capacity to deal and work with at the policy level and also at the reserves and everything else. We can perhaps handle it to a reasonable extent. But only thing which I'm worried that which perhaps still we are not doing much is the thing which Professor Pasha was mentioning. Because if now even if tomorrow there is a de-escalation, because ultimately, it may happen that after a few days, few weeks, something, and then you have now this hardline regime in Iran, and the tensions and all kind of things continue within this region because that's how the nature of things are there. And since we also have a very important, say, stake in this region, economic stake, strategic, military, every kind of thing, whatever you can think, and all kind of connectivity. So any kind of new economic and I would say particularly the security architecture he was mentioning, where are we now? Yes, we do have some very good strategic partnerships with some of them, even working on the defense field, something. But if the situation changes slightly differently, are we really proactively working on this? And that's what I was hinting earlier, because now as a BRICS presidency, India still has a chance to assert. He said, we don't, Professor Pasha was mentioning that we are nowhere in the scene. To some extent, that's true because the kind of linkages we have, the kind of stake we have, and the partnership we have, we should also be working very, very actively to shape the region. I mean, after this war, whenever it's going to end, there's going to be new kind of alignments, new kind of thinking, new kind of things are going to happen. And as a very important, responsible country, and also our own ambitions to play a bigger role globally, we should also be doing it much more, not even looks like that it's siding with one side there or other, but really we can play a much bigger role there. To shape this region, that's what perhaps the kind of thinking which is required, which we need to do more than what one has seen so far.
Thank you. I think it's been a really rich discussion, and you have summed it up very well, Professor Sachdeva, the main issues that are open and that are troublesome for us. So I would like to say that inflation, since we come from inflation having been abnormally low in the past couple of years, we have some room. And if de-escalation does take place within a few weeks, we can manage the pressures, because they've passed some supplementary grants, etc., to cover fertilizers, to cover short-term support, and they are supporting consumers first with LPG. That's why restaurants are taking the hit, but. And in the longer term, I think this should be a warning to us, as General Sharma was saying, that we pursue trade diversity, diverse sources of oil, different kinds of oil, redouble our efforts at green, moving away from oil and reducing our vulnerability to oil. And also that India can civilizationally, as a country that has very rarely started a war, or, we must sort of push peace, the dialogue. And, these wars help nobody and they hurt so many people. It is really sad to see the kind of death and destruction, these modern warfare where you bomb a country internally and the civilians really suffer. Started with those 300 school children in Iran. It's very, very tragic. So India must, I think, take part in dialogue to end this. So thank you. I'll hand it over to Charu. Yeah.
Thank you very much, each one of you, bringing in different aspects. Many of us, Professor Sachdeva, were worried, what is the position of Europe? On one hand, we had Spain taking a position, England took another position. I think France, Macron was willing to help but was rebutted, and many things we were reading in the papers. And today, now they have come out with a joint statement, Europeans saying that we are willing to do anything and everything that ensures that these oil supplies through Hormuz are not disrupted. Because this can have a massive spillover effect into the economy, and the world can spin into a depression, which I think is, as Professor Goyal was mentioning, such a devastating, where you have human loss, lives are lost, and then the economies are totally shattered, and they are on a trajectory which is very, very depressing. So I want to thank each one of you for bringing the richness of your analysis. General Sharma, as always, you have given us a very clear story. I thank you for that. Professor Pasha, want to thank you for your time also. I know you were traveling and very busy. And Professor Goyal, forgive me, I fall back on you so at such a short notice. But as things were developing and I got up in the morning and read what has happened, I thought your presence is a must in this discussion. So I requested you to chair it and bring your experience on it. So I want to thank each one of you. I want to thank each of the participants who joined today. There were more than 100 at one point. I thank each one of them. Next Friday, I am so happy to share with you, we continue on the journey of understanding what other countries are doing to grow fast. And Indonesia is one country which is competing with us. They had launched Golden Indonesia, something like our Viksit Bharat. They launched it officially in 2019, but unofficially they started talking about it in 2012, and they complete 100 years of their independence in 2045. So as we do it in 47, they do it in 45, and they are trying to build in Golden Indonesia. To speak on the Golden Indonesia, we have one speaker, who has started Arthashastra, a think tank in Bali, and who was earlier in OECD and then settled down from 1997 when we had the problems of the Asian global crisis in Indonesia as advisor to the government of Indonesia. He is going to bring to us the rich experience of what Indonesia is, how they are preparing to compete, and how they have prepared themselves to ensure 7% plus growth rate over the last few years. Next week, around 4 to 5:30, we'll have Dr. Mishra, who will be speaking to us, an Indian who then dedicated his whole life to Indonesia after working for the initial 5 years in OECD. He will bring to us the complete story of Indonesia, being an Indian and working there. What are the lessons that we can draw from Indonesia? Soon thereafter, in few weeks, we will have China exactly the same way dissected and discussed how and what is China doing to grow at that rapid rate that they grew from 1978 to 2012. So I would invite you next Friday to be with us to discuss, listen, and then share the knowledge of Indonesia's growth story. Once again, thanking each one of you to be with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I learned a lot from all the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent, Charan, very good as usual, very topical issue and in-depth knowledge. Thank you. Bye.